Hey guys, I'm back here for a floor review. This video is going to be sort of a twofer because I'm going to talk about both the La Sportiva G5 as well as the La Sportiva G2 SM. Now I decided to sort of pair both these boots together in a video because they are very similar, as well as I got them at the same time, so I've had the same amount of time to try both the boots out. So I just checked La Sportiva's website this morning. The G5 is going to run you about $750, as well as the G2 SM is going to be about $850. Very pricey boots, but these are kind of more of like after your second pair of boots. As in, you've already gone through a pair of boots or you own a pair of boots and you want to upgrade. So basically, like, you would move on to a G5. I moved on to the G5 from using the Nepal because mainly my feet got colder, and then this boot is a warmer boot than the Nepal, mainly because of the construction, the gaiter that's integrated onto the boot, and perhaps some other materials in the sole. The G2 SM is more of a higher altitude boot than, say, the G5 because it is a double boot. It comes with a liner on the inside as well as an outer boot. And I'll get into the specifics of these things, but this would be used, this is actually considered a 7,000 meter boot, and so you can use this on peaks like Aconcagua and other 7 summit peaks. Some folks use this on Denali for more technical routes. However, climbers on Denali are moving to more 8,000 meter boots, and if I were on Denali, I would use an 8,000 meter boot because of my cold toes, but if you have warmer feet, then you can easily use this on Denali, as well as other Alaska range climbing. Mount Rainier on the shoulder seasons, spring and fall, it's good to have a double boot, and so that's when you would break this guy out. Me personally, I do tend to use this in winter as well as on Rainier for the few trips on Rainier that I guide during the year. So let's move on to some of the features of these boots. Another reason why I'm pairing these two together in a review is because they have a lot of the same features. And so if I pull up the G5 right here, the inside, both these boots have an integrated gaiter, which helps add to the warmth of the boot as well as keep stuff out of the boot when you're using them. They fold down real easy. The inside, you can feel the gaiter is actually pretty burly. I would say that on the G2, the gaiter is more burly than the G5, which makes sense because of the different materials and different places you'd be using them. The lacing system is called a BOA lacing system. There's a little close-up shot, as well as it links into these little wires right here. The wires, you would worry would break over time, but they are pretty burly. And I haven't had any break yet, but I've only had these boots for about a year, so who knows, maybe I'll give you guys an update if that does break. You pull the little bevel here out in order to loosen the wires, so now you can actually fit your foot into the boot. Once your foot is in, you just clip that, and then you can see as I adjust, the wires will go down, and then you can tension the boot to the fit that you want. Wires go down to about the toe so you can feel an even fit on the top of your foot. And then for your ankle in this boot, you have a power strap, just like a ski boot that links in right here. And so you can get your ankle tensioned to the way you want it, and your feet are also tensioned. Now the idea with this system, and one of the great benefits of not having laces, is that you don't need to take off your gloves to put on this boot. You can easily work the power strap with your gloves, and then the boa constriction works just fine. Then you pull this gaiter up. The zipper is a very burly zipper, definitely a waterproof type construction too, as I look at it closer. Actually kind of hard to zip up. And then to top it off, you have Velcro to just sort of seal off the zipper fully, along with good product placement right there. So yeah, the Velcro is also pretty burly. I've never had it come undone on me, and I've used these boots a good, decent amount. Another thing with this is you get this really good pull tab right here to pull the Velcro apart and zip down, so that way you can also take the boots off with gloves quite easily. These are both full shank boots, so they will fit any type of crampon. Moving on to the G2SM, like I said before, it has a liner boot, and this inner boot is pretty well made. It's definitely, I think, these G2s are very light for double boots. So obviously the more material you stick on your feet, the heavier it gets and the more exhausting it can become. And so these are some of the lightest double boots on the market, and that's what really impressed me when I first took these out of the box with how light they were. Same thing with the G5s actually. These are pretty light single boots for how warm they are. But one thing I think that they really did to help decrease the weight in the G2s is the liner. And so when you pick up something like plastic boots, the liner is kind of its own shoe, so to speak, and that's mainly because of the sole. It really works with you wearing the sole around base camp or something because it has a full-on sole to this liner. And so that can be like your base camp footwear. You stick it in your boot for going higher up. However, these liners in the G2SM are more fragile, I could say. They're kind of like the liner to a ski boot, so to speak, maybe a little bit less burly on the bottom. I can feel that it has some sort of material on the bottom that would give you a bit of traction if you were to wear this on its own. But I would just worry that if you really like wearing your liners outside your boots at base camp, I think these are going to get torn up. So I would say that the liners have been cut down on, not in terms of warmth, they keep your feet really warm, but in terms of weight to keep the whole system lightweight. And then when you go to the boot, you get the same burly rubber that's on all these mountain boots with the Vibram sole. I had to read that little thing. So the boot's super burly. You can see I've only had these boots for about a year, so the tread is still really well in there. The G5s are a little bit more dirty, but you can see really good tread. I even climbed a little bit of rock in these, and I gotta say that they handled as well as you would expect, but I thought that they were nice and grippy. You can buy a new liner when these things get torn up, but the rest of the boot is really nice. Like I said before, the gaiter on this is a bit more burly than the G5s, and I think that's really nice. The cuff on the boot is obviously also bigger because you have to fit a liner and your foot in there. When it comes to the gaiter, they actually have this little strap right here that you can pull to make the gaiter suck up around either your foot or your pants if you shove your pants in there. Whereas the G5s don't have that on their gaiter because it's, a lighter boot. These still do just fine when you zip them up to sort of suck up around your foot. Any normal pair of hiking socks goes up to this line. When I first bought these boots, I was wondering what kind of socks I would need to fit this integrated gaiter. And so having, when I realized that when I wear my normal medium weight hiking socks that I wear for all my other footwear, this gaiter material doesn't rub on my leg. Even if it did, it's really, it's not actually like a very burly material, so it's not gonna be super abrasive on my leg. But either way, normal weight or normal length of sock, hiking sock, will work with these boots. Same deal with these guys. Normal hiking sock fits perfectly in the inner boot. So the lacing system for this boot is the same as the G5. It's the BOA lacing system. The only difference with this is there's two adjustments. So instead of having a power strap, you have a lacing system for the top cuff of your boot and then a lacing system for all the toes. So the one on the right handles the cuff. There you go, you can see now it's at pretty good tension. They allow a lot of extra wire, I'm gonna call it wire, so that way when you pop this out, you can get this whole thing spread apart quite a bit to shove your liner in there, either with your foot in it, or if the liner's already in there, then you can stick your foot in. That gives you, there's enough room for both of those to work. And then the left one here handles the toes. There we go. And that's the same exact adjustment as the G5s, it's the same exact area of the foot that it adjusts. So once you get both of those tensioned up, then your boot is ready to go. It gives you really good cuff flex on both of these. The good part about the double boots as opposed to the single boots is any sort of rub that happens, especially if you're walking on these on flat ground, will happen between the liner and the boot as opposed to your foot and the boot, which you get with more single boots is the rub of the heel against the back inside of the boot. So that kind of happens with every double boot though, so it's not exactly a point of sale for these ones specifically. All right, so moving on to wrap up with these boots, going on to my personal testing with them, I've used the G5s on ice climbing, vertical ice climbing. I've used them for mountaineering, both technical, non-technical mountaineering. I've used them in Colorado, in Mexico, and I've used them also here in Washington. So I feel like I got a really good idea of what I would personally use these boots for. Before I get into my personal use, I would say for anyone who's normal and not like me, these boots would be good for anything in the lower 48. You can use them ice climbing in Ouray. You can use them off in like the volcanoes on Rainier. You can use these boots. They keep your feet warmer than Nepal's. They're kind of like the warmest version of single boots that La Sportiva provides. Another comparable boot to this would be like the Scarpa Phantom Tech. It's just it's a really great boot. The lack of laces here keeps it really thin and compact. It doesn't provide as much stuff to snag on if you have crampons on. The gaiter fits both pants on the outside, which is the most common way myself and many other people use them, but it also will allow enough room to stuff your pants in here if you want to use them as actual gaiters. As well as these boots come with this little loop right here, so that way if you want to stick another gaiter on top of this, then you have something to hook that gaiter on. And then the G2 SMs also come with that little loop there, so you can attach gaiters on top of this boot and go double gaiters. These boots wouldn't be super amazing at climbing rock as much as a 3/4 shank boot because of that lack of flexing. But as far as the rock I have done in these boots, they work just fine, Another thing you could always do is just slap some crampons on them and use them for dry tooling, which I've done a number of times now in these things, and I gotta say that they handle very well. Overall, it's a great addition to the La Sportiva lineup. If you're worried about your toes being cold and you want something to bump up from a lesser single boot, then this is a good boot to go for. Again, I think it's a secondary boot. If you don't want to waste the money on the first boot and just go straight to this, if you know this is what you're going for, then go for it. But I think that it's, for those of you who don't have problems with cold toes and you want a boot for Baker or a Hood or something like that, then you don't have to go this high up the scale. You can just go with Nepal's or something a bit cheaper. If you're looking for a nice technical boot for ice climbing and winter objectives, I would definitely recommend this. Again, because of its low profile, nothing to get snagged on. The integrated gaiter provides many opportunities as well as saves weight. And this is a bit of a lighter weight boot while keeping your foot warmer. So I think it would be a great, if you want to do like Hallett Peak or Chair Peak or any of the other peaks in winter, for winter technical mountaineering, then this is definitely the boot you want to go with. All right, so when do you use the G2 SMs? So this is definitely more colder conditions. Like I said before, you would use these on a number of higher peaks, 6,000 meter peaks. After all, the double boot brand is labeled as a 6,000 meter boot. A comparable boot to this would be the Scarpa Phantom Tech 6000 because of the 6,000 meter. La Sportiva actually markets this as a 7,000 meter boot, which I guess means that, it's warmer than other 6,000 meter boots. However, with my cold toe problems, I probably won't be using this on a peak that's 7,000 meters or a colder 6,000 meter peak. I would bump up to the next 8,000 meter boots. But this has all the same uses as the G5. I've used these also for vertical ice climbing. I've climbed up to WI3 plus and maybe even a couple of WI4 routes in these double boots. And while they take a little bit of getting used to with being a little bit looser by virtue of that inner gaiter, or by virtue of that inner liner, they just take a little bit of getting used to. But then after a while, they sort of feel the same as the G5s. Now, I definitely wouldn't recommend using these for your dry tooling projects because that's just way too bulky, and that's when you want to go to the thinner boots. But for ice climbing, you know, WI3 plus 4 and below, I think these are really nice, especially multi-pitch ice climbing because they keep your feet really warm. And as well as multi-pitch climbing, you kind of do more sitting around rather than actual climbing and building heat. So it's kind of nice to have that extra warmth on your foot. I think these would also be great for Alaska. I'm planning to use these on upcoming Alaska trips just because of, again, keeping my feet warmer. And I think these are extremely precise for being double boots. For the weight of the boot, they're really precise in both ice climbing and those small steps of mixed climbing that you have to do on various alpine terrain. And so that's where I think these boots would come in handy. Also, using them on Rainier and other colder mountains in the shoulder season in the lower 48 wouldn't be a bad idea. So moving on to the more personal reasons why I have these boots. Like I said before, I have the G2SM for Rainier when I guide it any time of the year, as well as if I climb it any time of the year. I'm going to use a double boot for it because of all my cold feet problems. I also use these ice climbing, both easier days of ice climbing when I'm just on, you know, WI2, WI3, and I've even used these on harder ice climbing, as you heard before. If I am going up to really hard stuff and more complex mixed climbing, I may go with this boot. But that I just may have some cold toes throughout the day. Usually it happens once and then it never happens again, so I just sort of bear with it. Other times I use this boot. One thing that I really regretted doing was when I went to climb Itzta and Orizaba in Mexico, I brought these boots because of making my luggage lighter. But when I was actually on the mountain, I really would have preferred having some form of double boot. Now, that's just me personally. I know some people, or you know, plenty of people summit those mountains in Nepal's, but the way how my body works, it's nice to have the warmer stuff. I'm cold body. I get cold bones, especially cold toes. Another thing I would use these double boots for in that vein of cold toes is for Mount Baker in early and late season, just because I really don't want to deal with it. And it's nice to have snow, or when it's actively snowing and very cold, it's just nice to have these boots. Now these boots come in, the G5s come in during any other time. Like I said before, hard climbing where I need these boots, hard alpine climbing, snow school in the summer, and anytime I'm hanging out in snow. I actually just shot a couple of snow school videos a little bit ago where I was chopping steps and wandering around and doing like crevasse rescue videos, and I used these boots for it because it was in the sun and I just needed something to protect my feet against the snow. I'll also use these on Baker and other mountains like that during the height of summer because I just don't need anything as burly as the double boots, and these still get the job done, and they're lighter weight on my feet, which ultimately saves me a bit of energy. So there you have it, guys. That's my boot review for the G2SM and the La Sportiva G5. And that's just about what their recommended use is, their different features, and what I use them for, and every area that I've tested them on. And so far, they've just been great boots. So let me know your opinion. Let me know the boots you like to use, and I'll see you guys in the next video.